All right, well, happening right now, as we give you a look at what's going on the House floor, lawmakers are voting on that piece of legislation, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, to allow the next step to progress in this effort to release the Epstein files. We know that this is just one step in the process. If it passes, and it looks like it's going to pass unanimously, as we heard Speaker Johnson say earlier today, the next step would be to go to the Senate. Now, the bill is expected to pass, but there remains a lot of questions about what that would mean moving forward. And joining us now to break this all down is Neama Rahmani. Neama is a former federal prosecutor and someone we often turn to for legal expertise. And the timing could not have been better because it's all unfolding right now, Neama. As I mentioned, this is a step towards releasing the files, but we still have some legal obstacles before this is really a done deal. Walk us through some of the potential roadblocks here.
Well, Michelle, there's the political and there's the legal. Or start with the political. It does seem like the act is going to pass unanimously through the House, or certainly overwhelmingly. And that's important because obviously there's always the prospect of a presidential veto. On Sunday, the president did say that he's going to encourage House Republicans to vote in favor of the bill. So we'll see what happens in the Senate. Of course, there is that 60 senator threshold for a filibuster, and of course 67 senators would be required to overrule a presidential veto if that happens. But let's say the bill sails through Congress, President Trump signs it into law. That doesn't mean we're at the end of the legal road, and this is why. Let's be clear. The Epstein Files Transparency Act is not necessary for the DOJ to release the files. The Attorney General can, with a stroke of her pen, choose to waive the executive privilege, the law enforcement privilege, and the deliberative process privilege and make the files public, like many people promised last year and earlier this year. So there is the theoretical possibility that Congress passes this law and the DOJ still refuses to produce the files, in which case the courts will have to sort through that. That'll be a dispute between the legislature, Article 1, and the executive, Article 2.
And it would also be a dispute by the court of public opinion. I mean, there would be quite an uproar if that were to play out as you just laid out. And also, to add to what you are mentioning there, today we heard from Speaker Johnson already laying the groundwork, it seemed, for the need to potentially redact certain information. He noted all of the victims have not gone public and the need to protect those victims who don't want to be publicly identified. Do you believe the DOJ, let's say they do release the files, but they could use that for withholding evidence?
Michelle, even if the DOJ wants to release the full Epstein files, there are two categories of information that can't be released as a matter of law. The first is grand jury material. That's secret, and only a judge can order that disclosed or released or unsealed. And then is identifying information for victims. That is private under federal law. Now, that doesn't mean that the files can't be redacted or just certain information withheld. But those two categories have to remain either sealed or redacted. There's nothing that the Department of Justice can do to release that material.
So at the end of the day, is this just performative? Do you think we're actually going to learn more and those files will be released?
Potentially. It's really up to the Trump administration and the DOJ. I mean, again, this is their privilege. They hold the privilege. So going through them, so there's a law enforcement privilege, and the DOJ can say that, well, the Southern District of New York and U.S. Attorney Clayton there is investigating this case, so we're not going to release the files. Or even for investigations that are closed, generally that deliberative process privilege prevents the media, members of the public like myself, even litigants from subpoenaing the DOJ and forcing them to turn over these documents. So really, it's up to them. And although this is an important first step, it's really more for the court of public opinion than the courtroom necessarily, because even if the DOJ were to release all the files, and let's say they just withheld the grand jury material and the victims' names, a lot of people are asking me, well, will this result in criminal charges or potential civil liability? And I say no, and this is why. The evidence that we've seen, it could be FBI interview notes, it could be Epstein emails, really anything of the sort. It's all hearsay. A criminal prosecution requires a living, willing, and able victim. Someone has to testify. The evidence I've been talking about, it's all hearsay. And under the confrontation clause of the Constitution, a criminal defendant, someone who's accused, has the right to look their accuser in the eye and cross-examine them. So unless there's another victim that comes forward and makes these allegations, the evidence here really won't make it into a courtroom because it doesn't satisfy the rules of evidence. So it probably won't result in a prosecution, although there will likely be significant and far-ranging political fallout.
So, final word here. How do you think this all ends?
I think this is going to end with the legacy of some rich and powerful people being tarnished to the extent that they are associated with Jeffrey Epstein. They were on his island. Obviously, we know that there's terabytes of data. And that leads me to believe that we have a lot of video evidence, likely the cameras outside of his home. So we're likely going to know who was present. There's probably not going to be actual evidence of the abuse, although there were some allegations that Jeffrey Epstein did have child pornography. So unless the sex acts were actually caught on video or there's pictures of it, I think that association will be a stigma that will really last with some individuals for the rest of their life.
All right, Neama Rahmani, thank you so much, former federal prosecutor, for joining us today.
Thanks, Michelle. Talk soon.